everybody, and welcome back to my channel. This one's a little bit late. I'm also coming to you in my comfy new jumpsuit and this cardigan that I've been living in because it's so nice and cozy and loose. But today we're going to be talking April wrap-up, so the magical readathon. I ended up reading everything I needed to, and if you hear the grass being cut, that's because it is. I need to film this video. April wrap-up and May TBR. I know we are a week, 2 weeks in already, but I digress. There's only 2, maybe 3 things on my to-read list this month, so nothing super crazy. So let's dive in. I have my little notes here. The first book that I read this month was The Cruelest Kind of Hate by Celeste Byers. This was a good hockey romance, nothing groundbreaking, but it was pretty good. So we follow our 2 main characters, Callista and Gage. And Gage is a well-renowned goalie in the NHL, and he had an injury during one of their games. Callista ends up helping him with his rehab. The two had met prior to this engagement, as she was picking up her little brother as she's his sole caretaker, as her mother is very sick, so she takes care of both of them. Is late to pick him up from hockey practice, ends up parking where she shouldn't be. The car ends up blocking her in whose spot it is. They end up having a argument. Fast forward, he now has an injury. One of his friends or team management suggests dance and stretching may help, so he goes to the studio seeing if he can get some stretches, and it turns out to be the girl he had an argument with. Their romance really takes off from there. Callista's little brother actually plays hockey, as she was picking him up from hockey practice, but he gets bullied by the other kids on his team because he's not as big and he's not as fast. He's just not as good. She makes Gage a deal. I'll help you with your rehab. You help my little brother with hockey. So he kind of takes lessons from him, and things really pick up and take off. Next, I read The Firefighter Phoenix by Zoe Chant. This is number, I don't know, like 7. There's a lot of books within this series, and then we follow the main couples that we read their children in the next series. It's a thing, but these are fast, easy to read, great stories. And so in this one we follow Ash, who is a phoenix, and we also follow Rose, who is a swan shifter. Rose becomes endangered by warlocks, I guess you could say. Her and Ash have an attraction to each other, but Ash doesn't have a true mate, and neither does Rose. And so they have an attraction to one another, and Rose tries to date Ash, but he declines. So they kind of play this game of cat and mouse up until this point, but when Rose becomes endangered, Ash steps in and helps rescue her, and their past comes to light. Next thing I read was The Friend Zone Fiasco by Crystal Caswell. This was actually quite good. I had some really wonderful laughs. I think I teared up at one point, but we follow our 2 main characters, Dare and Val, and they've been friends since childhood. Dare's dad is not the best influence, especially when it comes to romantic relationships. I believe he cheated on his mom and had many partners, from what I remember. And they've had an attraction to each other teenage to adult life, but since they're best friends, neither of them wanted to acknowledge that attraction. Well, fast forward, Dare works at a tattoo shop. This is 1 in 5 or 6 standalones where the main male characters mostly work at this tattoo shop. And Val is a student who's currently living in Europe. So she comes home for a break, I believe, and she's supposed to go back to Europe and pack up her life to move back home, and she's supposed to do it with a friend. Their plans end up falling through, so she ends up asking Dare to go with her, and throughout the course of their trip together, they both realize that maybe their attraction isn't just one-sided. It's so cute, so funny, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay, next I read Mother Pucker by Swati M.H. again, 1 in 5 or 6, but we follow Shay, who is a mom who is widowed, and she and a group of friends decided, hey, we're gonna live in this brownstone that one of them owns or was handed down to with our kids, because either one thing or another, they're widowed like Shay, or they've sworn off relationships, or something's happened with the dad. So they decide to move into this brownstone, fixer-upper, and raise their kids together. Shay is a physical therapist, and Rowan, our love interest, is a hockey player. Obviously, he has an injury, and one of the significant others of the other women that live in this brownstone with Shay is the hockey team owner, or his family owns the team or something. And he recommends Shay to Rowan. She obviously instant attraction, but she has a child that she needs to look out for. It's not just her. So she is very standoffish at first, wants to keep their relationship extremely professional. And Rowan is this hotshot hockey player. He is not quite about his attraction to her, but respects her decision, but also is very flirty. It's just his personality. Shay's son also really wants to play hockey, but Shay is a over worrier to the point where she holds herself as well as her son back from doing things. And she's an extreme health nut. She makes these smoothies that everybody hates, but they love her, so they kind of drink them anyways, that kind of thing. And so Rowan, finding out that her son wants to play hockey, says, hey, I could give him skating lessons and kind of teach him so he's safe if ever he does want to play on a team. So Rowan kind of brings Shay out of her shell, as well as gives her a little cushion, I guess you could say, with her son, and allowing that leash get a little bit longer for him as well. It was very sweet, very funny. I really enjoyed it. Okay, then we have Wonder Girl by Charm Harlow. This is like a quick, fast, insta love romance. If you're looking for something that really develops past physical attraction, this isn't the one for you at all. So we have our main character who's in college, and she catches her boyfriend with her best friend as she surprises him one night, as something had gotten canceled. So she goes to his dorm room to surprise him, or his apartment to surprise him, and her best friend is there. Speechless when she opens the door and hears him talking about their sexual interaction loud and clear, until he realizes who's at the door. And then it's all, oh, it's not what it looks like. And she's like, yeah, fuck you, we're done. Fast forward a little bit, she's in a club and she ends up seeing the two of them. And so she goes to leave, bumping into these 3 guys. She's really not paying attention. She just wants to get the F out of this club. One of the guys end up following her because they see that she's in distress. So they follow her and are like, are you okay? She's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. They're like, it's fine. We just want to know, are you okay? You seem really upset. And she's like, do you want to get out of here? They end up going to an amusement park. Her ex is also a college hockey player, but the 3 guys end up being pro hockey players that her ex actually really looks up to. So they post on Instagram, and she kind of explains her situation of what's going on. And on the other side, these 3 guys, they share, if you know what I mean. This is a, I guess, reverse harem, I guess you could say. They can't get Wonder Girl out of their brain. She bumps into Sean, I believe, maybe it's Noah, at a coffee shop. He's like, hey, what are you doing? And they end up hanging out, and then she ends up having the best sexual experience, I guess, she could have with the 3 of them, and them individually. So neither of them can get her out of their heads. So they're like, hey, we made it to the finals, we're flying to Chicago, we want you to come with us. She hems and haws and ends up going, and they end up falling in love. It's super basic. There's nothing crazy. It is what it is. Next, I read Icebound by Meredith Trapp. So we follow Rode and Philomena, who goes by Nina. So Rode is older. He's a hockey player. He's older within his career. He's really not that old. I think he's in his late 20s, early 30s. You can't play hockey for the rest of your life. So his contract is ending and he doesn't know if he wants to retire or if he wants to keep playing. He's team captain. So then we have Philomena, who is a student. She's 22 and she had a bad experience with a hockey player ex. So she's, one, said no more relationships, and two, especially no more relationships with hockey guys. And Rode, in his early career days, was known as a player and partier, and there was a incident that he was a part of, an experience with a threesome and a yacht, and it ended up catching fire, and it's followed him throughout his entire career. But that's not who he is anymore. He's grown up. He really wants to settle down. He had his heart broken and he just wants to settle down. But he doesn't want to settle down with anyone young. Fast forward and they meet as she's an Uber driver and she picks him up of a club I think he's left. She ends up getting into a crash with a car, or she swerves to miss a car. I don't quite remember. But there's a mom and a child involved, and the child has an asthma attack, and Nina, being who she is, she just knows that coffee helps asthma attacks. It allows, I think the book explained it, like opens the airways or something like that. I don't know if that's true. Please do your own research, ask your doctor about it. I'm not condoning to do this. It's just in the novel. It turns out that the mom is actually a company CEO of a product that athletes like, and they think that she and Rode are together. They fake date to make Rode look better and to have her ex-boyfriend get off her back, because the ex that went downhill ended up dating her sister, and her sister lived together, which is tricky. So there's that. But it was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Nothing crazy. It was enjoyable. Then we have Dirty Bossy Doctor by Sophia T. Summers. This is an office pregnancy romance. I DNF'd this. I think it was like 20 pages in. So we follow our intern, whose name is, I don't even remember her name, who thinks she knows everything, and we have our doctor, Nathan Pierce, who is her attending. At this hospital, they very much pride themselves on processes. There's a reason we do things for our clients, for our patients, and she doesn't adhere to protocol whatsoever, kind of undermines him every turn. They don't get along because he calls her out and she's like, well, this is gonna happen, like, I caught it, and he's like, that's great that you caught it, but that's not the process in which we do things. This is why you're here. You're an intern. You're not a doctor yet. You can't order tests. You can't administer things. That's the whole point of being an intern, is to learn the processes at which we do things. And she just like doesn't give a shit about any of that. Turns out they have some sexual attraction. He gives off very Dom energy and she gives off Dom bratty energy. And she pushes his buttons, and they end up having sexual interaction a few times. He's gonna teach her a lesson, but it doesn't work. It just was so annoying. Like, she's also been talked to by people above Pierce, and they've been told to get along. They've also told her, hey, like, this is your job as an intern. And she still just like doesn't give a shit. And it's super annoying the way that she talks, that we read from her. I can't do it. Nathan Pierce, totally fine. I really loved his POV. It was great, but I didn't like reading from her whatsoever. It did not make my experience a good one. All right, so two more. The Playboy by Marnie Mann. So we follow Macon, who is a billionaire. His family, the Spades, own a hotel branch. A hotel empire, really. And they're on a bachelor party for his brother or his cousin, and from a relationship in college, he has sworn off relationships. At this bachelor party on vacation, he sees this woman who catches his eye. He can't get her out of his head. They end up having sexual relation in the bus. He goes back to that club every single night trying to see her. We have Brooklyn, said woman, who's a student and she works as a hotel maid. She dances at this club by herself just to de-stress. She lives in a tiny apartment with her 2 other sisters, and she just needs to de-stress, so she goes dancing. She ends up finding out that she's the maid who cleans Macon's room, and he thinks that she's just a student and she's not a maid. She feels like when she finds out who he is, that he won't want to be with her. She doesn't tell him her background at all. Over dinner, they get talking and her experience within the hotel business of what she's in school for. And he's like, wow, like, you're really good. We could use you at our company. So he gets her an interview, ends up being with his cousin or his brother, and then their significant other. The truth comes out and it goes downhill from there with her lies. It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The last book I read in April was The Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This was a reread, and we follow Nova, who has a hard past. Her mom, her dad, and her sister used to live in this little apartment, and they ended up getting murdered one evening, and she ends up putting the person to sleep because within this world we have superheroes, people with superpowers. And the anarchists started, it's kind of X-Men-ish. We started this world with an uprising from the anarchists being looked down upon people with powers. And so they stopped that and put people with powers kind of in power, I guess you could say. Her uncle, Ace, ended up saving her and bringing her to his home. Nova is now older and her power is to put people to sleep. In turn, she doesn't sleep. Being part of the anarchists, as we find out that Ace is the head anarchist, there was a big showdown, a big war, a big battle, and the renegades ended up winning. The renegades are the heroes of this world. Nova is at this parade that they have every year to commemorate the renegades defeating the anarchists. While she's watching, waiting to get in position for a plan that her and the anarchists have devised to kill Captain Chromium, I believe his name is. She is pickpocketed by this girl, and Adrian steps in and says, hey, give it back. She goes on her way. The plan fails. They don't end up killing the captain. Some things happen to get closer to the renegades. They make up a background for Nova so she can try out to be a renegade, because they have tryouts every year if teams or patrol teams or whatever are looking for new people. Nova tries out to infiltrate the renegades to take them down from the inside. Adrian, sorry, I'll go into a little bit in depth with him. He is the son of not 2 but 3 very famous renegades. His mom was murdered, I believe before the battle happened, and he was taken in by Captain Chromium and his husband. I forget what his name is. So not only was his mom a renegade, but he was taken in by the 2 head wigs, like head honchos of the renegades. Adrian has a cool ability, so he can draw things and bring them to life. And like, this is anything you could ever imagine, he can draw it and bring it to life. And it's really good. I thoroughly enjoy it. I also recommend the audiobooks. That's how I read them the first time. It's a trilogy, and that's how I'm gonna reread them or continue the reread, is with audiobooks. Those are all the books that I read during April, and we will get into the books that I want to read for May. So as of right now, I have 2. I have The Broken Eye by Brent Weeks. It's book 3 in the Lightbringer series. And then I also want to do a reread of the Shadow Demon Saga by Sarah Cannon. That's my plan. I will come to you with a wrap up on time at the end of May, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.